There's a moment that happens after big fights that most people never notice. It's not the knockdown, it's not the medical report, it's not even the interviews, it's the silence. The hours after the cameras shut off, when the noise fades, when people stop posting, when the people who usually rush to speak don't. And after that fight, the silence was louder than anything Jake Paul said in the ring. Because yes, he got dropped. Yes, his jaw was broken. Yes, he went to the hospital. But none of that is what changed everything. What changed everything is what happened after. And more importantly, what didn't. Because if you strip away the memes, the jokes, the hot takes, there's a much bigger story unfolding in the background. One that has nothing to do with boxing skill and everything to do with trust, money, and whether Jake Paul is still worth betting on at the highest level. Let's rewind, not to the knockout, but to the expectation. This fight was never just about Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. For Jake, it was about legitimacy. For Joshua, it was about professionalism. But for the people paying the bills, this fight represented something else entirely. This was supposed to be proof. Proof that a platform known for documentaries, dramas, and series could step into live, elite boxing and not embarrass itself. This wasn't influencer boxing. This wasn't charity rounds. This wasn't novelty. This was marketed as serious heavyweight boxing on a global stage. Real judges, real doctors, real risk. And Jake Paul was the face of it. That's where the tension starts. Because Jake didn't walk into that ring as just a fighter. He walked in as a product, a bridge, a calculated gamble. The pitch was simple, loud, controversial, polarizing, but valuable. You don't need everyone to love him. You just need them to watch. And for a long time, that formula worked, until it didn't. From the opening rounds, something felt off. Not because Jake looked scared, he didn't. Not because Joshua looked dominant, he barely showed anything. It felt off because the roles were obvious. Jake wasn't trying to win. He was trying to survive. Move, grab, reset, circle, clinch, breathe, borrow time. And here's the part most casual viewers missed. Anthony Joshua allowed it. He didn't chase. He didn't force exchanges. He didn't empty the tank. He watched. That's what experience looks like. When you know the other guy is spending energy just to exist, you let him. By the fifth round, the illusion cracked. Not from chaos, not from some wild moment, from accumulation, balance gone, legs stiff, breathing heavy. Two knockdowns that weren't shocking, they were inevitable. By the sixth round, the fight didn't end with controversy, it ended with physics. And the ref stepping in wasn't drama, it was mercy. That should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't, because what followed mattered more. No press conference, no victory spin, no, "I'll be back stronger." Jake went to the hospital. Then the reports came out. Broken jaw, then worse, double fracture, surgery, plates, teeth removed. This wasn't a bruise you ice and joke about. This was structural damage. And that's where the tone should have changed. But instead of reflection, something else happened. Branding, hospital jokes, captions, sarcasm, turning trauma into content. From a fan perspective, that annoyed people. But from a business perspective, that rang alarm bells. Because here's the thing most people don't understand. At the level Jake Paul operates at, boxing is not the main product. Reliability is. When millions, sometimes hundreds of millions, are tied up in production, advertising, staffing, venues, and scheduling, the fight itself is just one piece of a massive machine. And that machine hates uncertainty. Now this is where we zoom out. Because the AJ loss didn't happen in isolation. There was already tension in the background. Another fight, another opponent, another massive event, Gervonta Davis. This wasn't just hype. This wasn't just talk. Tickets sold, marketing campaigns launched, venues booked, sponsors locked, production crews hired, money already spent, and then Jake pulled out. Not slowly, not after negotiations, unilaterally. From the outside, people argued about the reasons. From the inside, the only thing that mattered was this: the event collapsed after the machine was already running. And in business, that's unforgivable. Because when contracts are signed and money is committed, platforms don't care about narratives or personal stances. They care about predictability. Can you be trusted to show up when it matters? That question lingered quietly. Then the AJ fight happened. Then the injury. Then the silence. And suddenly, the calculation changed. Jake Paul had always been high risk, but he was also high reward. Now, he was injured. unavailable, legally noisy, publicly polarizing, and coming off a fight that exposed the limits of the product. That's when people started noticing something else. No reassurance. No, we stand by him. No next announcement. Just nothing. And silence from a company that knows how to control narrative is never accidental, especially when that company is expanding into other combat sports content, established names, cleaner partnerships, less volatility. This is where the speculation begins, and it's important to frame it properly. This doesn't mean anyone was fired. This doesn't mean there was a dramatic phone call. This is how big platforms actually move on. They stop calling. They stop promoting. They stop planning. They let time do the work. Because dropped doesn't always mean terminated. Sometimes it means not renewed, not prioritized, not defended. And when you look at Jake Paul's situation right now, every red flag that corporations care about is flashing. Injury downtime with no clear return date, legal distractions, a canceled mega event, a recent fight that made the spectacle look reckless instead of impressive, and most importantly, a shift in audience perception. People didn't watch the AJ fight wondering if Jake could win. They watched wondering how long he'd last. That subtle shift is deadly, because when expectation drops from competition to survival, the value of the spectacle collapses. Now combine that with the money talk. Reports swirling that both fighters still walked away with tens of millions. Jake lost badly and got paid anyway. That insulated him from consequence, but it enraged viewers. Fans can accept losing. They don't accept losing while acting victorious. That's when the brand first, boxer second label really stuck. And once a platform starts questioning whether you're still an asset or just a liability, the relationship changes fast. This is why the conversation now isn't about whether Jake Paul can fight again. It's about whether anyone at the top wants to build around him again. Because elite platforms don't need noise, they need dependability. And Jake Paul's biggest strength, unpredictability, may have finally become his biggest weakness. So when people ask why things feel different now, why there's no next announcement, why there's no reassurance, why the energy shifted overnight, this is why. Not because of one punch, not because of one loss, but because trust, once shaken at that level, is incredibly hard to rebuild. And sometimes, the most important decisions in boxing aren't announced with headlines. They're made quietly and felt later. And here's where it gets uncomfortable, because this part isn't about boxing at all. It's about how platforms think. Big platforms don't operate emotionally. They don't react the way fans do. They don't care about bravery, heart, or narratives about trying your best. Those are audience-facing ideas. Internally, decisions are colder. They ask different questions. Did the event hit projections? Did it justify the risk? Did the aftermath create problems we didn't anticipate? And most importantly, would we do this again? That last question is the killer, because the answer doesn't have to be never for a relationship to effectively end. It just has to be not right now. And not right now is where momentum goes to die. When a platform like Netflix decides to slow walk something, it doesn't announce it. It doesn't need to. It simply shifts focus elsewhere. Budgets get reallocated. Meetings stop happening. Calendars fill up with other projects. And suddenly, the thing that was once the centerpiece isn't mentioned anymore. That's what makes this situation feel different from every other controversy Jake Paul has been through. Normally, there's a bounce-back narrative ready to go, a next opponent teased, a comeback date floated, a "we're building something huge" line dropped into the media. This time, nothing. No hints, no leaks, no hype machine warming up. And that absence is doing more damage than any headline could. Because Jake Paul's entire value proposition has always been based on velocity. He moves fast. He dominates cycles. He stays in conversation. When velocity stops, questions start. And the questions don't just come from fans. They come from sponsors, advertisers, and executives who have to justify why their money is tied to a figure who may or may not be available, may or may not fight again soon, and may or may not be trusted to see things through. And this is the part where Jake Paul's entire career reaches a crossroads that has nothing to do with punches. Because for the first time, the thing Jake has always been able to rely on, leverage, doesn't hit the same. Before, Jake could lose a fight and still control the narrative. Before, controversy worked in his favor. Before, platforms tolerated chaos because the upside outweighed the inconvenience. That balance may have finally tipped. When you build your rise on disruption, every success trains people to tolerate more instability. But eventually, Disruption stops being exciting and starts being exhausting. And when that happens, even massive star power isn't enough to protect you. This is why the silence feels intentional. Netflix isn't known for impulsive reactions. They don't swing emotionally after one bad night, but they are ruthless about long-term positioning. If something threatens their credibility, especially in a new vertical like live boxing, they cut exposure quietly and move forward without fanfare. And here's the subtle detail that keeps coming up behind the scenes. There's been no internal push to reframe the AJ fight as a success. No spin about lasting 6 rounds. No emphasis on bravery. No talking points leaked to friendly outlets. That tells you the result didn't align with internal expectations. Let me know what you think. Is this just a pause, or the beginning of the end of a partnership that was always walking a tightrope? Subscribe to Fight Fury for the stories behind the fights, where business, power, and boxing collide.